Hello everyone. What we're about to do right now is roast naturally processed coffee. Naturals, they've always been around, but they've gotten really popular lately. Producers have really worked on making their processes more consistent. There's a lot of science and technique behind producing natural coffees now. They have intense fruit flavors. They can be really winey, big aromas. But with that requires, I think, a knowledge on how to roast them. So what we're going to do today is we're going to roast the coffee in such a way that we develop those really fruity flavors, but not push it so far that it starts to become overly boozy or kind of like cacao nibs. These are some of the traits you can get when you overdevelop coffee. And I find with naturally processed coffees, they're easy to overdevelop, and so we want to make sure that we're developing in a stage where you have lots of nice fruit, lots of sweetness, but you're not pushing it too far. The coffee I've chosen today is Catuai. This is from Lida Estate. It's a Panamanian coffee grown by the Amabassador family. They produce really delicious coffees, and they've developed a natural process style called ASD. It's anaerobic slow dry. So the cherries go into anaerobic tank, and then they are dried really slowly, which helps preserve the longevity of the coffee with that slow dry, but also develops really amazing fruit notes. So today I'm going to start at 8 for hot air, 8 for halogen. This is slightly lower. This is going to help the coffee with a bit of a more gentle drying. The other thing that we're going to be really mindful is how we use halogen, because halogen, in terms of coffees that have different colors, which often happens with natural coffees, it can have a negative effect. So we're going to make sure that once that coffee starts to fully dry and brown, that those uneven colors, we've pulled out the halogen to make sure that we still have even development. So I'm going to wait for it to turn around, and then I'll start to apply more heat. This is just to make sure that the coffee can dry at a nice, slow, even rate at the beginning. Often natural coffees tend to have, they dry at a different rate than washed coffees. The Amabassador coffees is dried really, really well, so I'm not too worried about it. But today we'll just make sure that we have a nice, soft drying phase, and then we increase the heat after it's turned around here. So there we have our turnaround. I'm going to apply a little bit more heat, so I'm going to go from 8 to 9. We'll keep halogen where it is. It's at 8. That's still a good amount of halogen, but we're going to keep a very close eye on how the coffee changes color. One of the interesting things for naturally processed coffees is I find they have a bigger sweet spot in terms of total development time if you want light or medium roast coffees. Washed coffees, if you taste grassiness, you know that you are underdeveloped, and you start to taste roast, you know you're overdeveloped. With naturally processed coffees, I find there's a bigger sweet spot. You can have coffees that are lightly fruited and really nuanced, and then you can push them more into big chocolate notes or big boozy notes. I personally like to find that middle ground where you've developed that. So that's what we're going to focus on today. That means a less aggressive development time than what we do with washed coffees, slightly longer roasts. So we're not going full low and slow on this roast, but we're going to have it sort of in that range where our rates are a little bit lower, and we're extending it out just to gain more complexity and avoid any big boozy notes from this coffee. So I can start to see the different colors that happen with this process. Many natural processed coffees have many different shades of seeds. As it starts to change in those colors, the halogen is going to affect each of those seeds differently. So I'm going to start to pull halogen out just to make sure that that halogen isn't causing underdevelopment and overdevelopment because of those different shades and the way they absorb light. So we're going to go down to 6. Seeds are getting a bit darker again. So we're going to step it down again to 4. I'm going to start to bring down the drum heater just a little bit, just to make sure it's not too hot once we hit first crack. The coffee now has hit like a light tan. The colors still look pretty even, so I'm going to be able to keep some halogen on just to make sure that nothing's spreading too much. I think right now at 4, we're in good shape where it's still applying some heat, it's still applying some development, but it's not going to scorch any areas that are darker than the rest of the coffee. We're going to go from 10 to 9.5 just to make sure we're slowing down. I don't want to come super fast into first crack. That's going to create bigger, boozier flavors in naturally processed coffees. If that's what you wanted, then we would come in sort of with a lot of momentum. We're going to try and make this a more nuanced and complex natural. I can start to see some different shades here. We're going to take that halogen. We're going to go straight off. We go from 9 to 8.5. My rates are still pretty high right now. On my bean surface, I'm between 10 and 11. We want to start to see that come down. We want to come nice and soft in the first crack with enough energy to still crack, but enough that we can control that and start to extend out that total development time. I'm starting here at the cracks. We're going to mark it right there. And we're very conscious here to make sure that our heat is controlled so that we are able to extend this development time without super high rates. So we're gonna pull some heat out right away. We're down to 8. But I have to be very mindful that I don't take too much heat out because I also don't want to stall it. This is a great moment to use the bean surface temperature because it will give you really fast readouts and allow you to make really fast decisions. That if I start to see it to stall, I can move my temperature back up. It's not gonna negatively impact the coffee. It's basically gonna save it from becoming stalled and creating those negative off-roast flavors. You can hear I have a fairly soft first crack. That's exactly where I want it. The roast is slowing down really nicely. On the bean surface, we're around 3 or 4 for our rates. So we're not at a stall, we're still nice and safe, but things are slowing down really nicely here. You can see I'm just at 2 now. We're still slowing down. For naturals, I like that, where you're almost hitting 0 by the time you drop the coffee. We're gonna take just over a minute and a half. We're almost at 0 here on the rate, which is beautiful. We're gonna drop right there. And this is a natural coffee.